Hello, everyone. This is Carol Dimitrov with OPA Outreach, and I'm really pleased today to announce that we've got Omari Martin with us and beautiful Taylor Schuler with us, and they are going to be talking about Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity through the lens of astrology. Omari is going to be going first, and then Taylor is also going to be speaking to us about the Divine Nine and the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority through the lens of astrology. So we have a really interesting program today. And like Amori and I were just speaking about, this really does make history because no one's talked about this subject before. And it's really special for Black History Month. So I hope you enjoy it. But before we get started, I just wanted to, while we're waiting for a few more people to pop on, to let you know that Kay Taylor is going to begin another consulting skills training. This is going to be just with Kay herself, and it starts Friday, March 10th for 6 weeks, and it's going to be from 3 to 7 p.m. Pacific. So that's a really great timing for people that are maybe on the East Coast, for people that are in Australia or Asia, to start their consulting work. There's also peer groups for 2023 that will be posted soon also, and you can go to our website in the events section. I will go ahead and put on a link to that. And then I also wanted to mention the 2023 virtual conference, Time for Technique, and that is April 21st through 23rd. So be sure that you look at our website for those wonderful events. Okay, so let me go ahead and just introduce this wonderful topic that Omari and Taylor are here for today. The Divine Nine will look at the 9 historically Black fraternities and sororities. Taylor and Omari Martin will be rectifying the inception charts and will share the history, process of rectifying, and how the archetypes show up for the organizations with a focus on the organization. And this has been since 1906 and 1908, respectively. Alpha Phi Alpha, the first intercollegiate fraternity established for African American men, and Alpha Kappa Alpha, the first Greek letter organization established by African American college educated women. And they've provided services to all mankind as a purpose. This presentation looks at both Black Greek organizations through the lens of astrology, of key moments in each organization's history. And by moving the birth chart of each organization forward through time, Frater Omari Martin and Soror Taylor Schuler will ponder what opportunities the 21st century brings for the organization's progress and the uplifting of humanity. And so there's a lot of research that has been put into this. So we're really excited about seeing the research. And just a little bit about Taylor. Taylor is an astrologer and host of the On Thriving Astrology and More with Taylor Schuler podcast, and also her YouTube channel. Connection, curiosity, courageous, compassion, and joy are her foundational values that support her clients, especially those who are facing a crossroads in life, love, or career. Taylor enjoys supporting her clients on their journey towards thriving and embracing a greater sense of clarity about their natural gifts and talents and how their impact is connected to a greater purpose here on Earth. She takes a liberal arts approach to astrology, blending evolutionary, traditional, Hellenistic, and modern lineages. And I will have to say also that Taylor is OPA's recording secretary. So we thank her for the work that she does with us there. And you can reach Taylor by visiting her website at taylorschuler.com. And many of you are already familiar with Omari's amazing work. He's done a lot of things for us here at OPA, and we appreciate him so much. He is a certified professional astrologer, life and board member of AFA, OPA. He's the president of Friends of Astrology, chairman of the Kepler College of Astrological Arts and Sciences, and life member of, I already said that, the Organization for Professional Astrology, OPA. Omari practices and teaches natal, electional, vocational, and mundane astrology, and owns solar wisdom and astropreneurship. He has presented at NORWAC, United Astrology Conference, the Indian Institute of Oriental Heritage 2019, and the Astrological Association of Great Britain, and also ESAR and several chapters of NCGR. He's been a guest on KUBU 96.5 FM and has written articles published in the Career Astrologer, which is now called the Evolving Astrologer. And you can reach Omari by the link on the mailing or by his website is Solar Wisdom. And I'm going to read that off to you, SOULAR wisdom.com. And Omari, it is all yours. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh-oh. Got a problem. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Let's see. It looks like your slides are moving.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
And that black box is gone. Maybe go from the beginning. Would that be?
Oh, goodness.
Can you hear me, Omari? Let's see. Omari, can you hear me? I think we might have lost a connection with Omari, so we'll see if he pops back in again. Let's just give this a moment for him to maybe reconnect. Taylor, are you there?
I am here.
Great.
Yeah, I think we should just see if we can give him 1 or 2 minutes to log back in.
Give him 1 or 2 minutes, and then if not, what we might do is just maybe start with you.
Yeah, that would be
okay, and wait for Omari to come back in. Great.
Yep.
Okay.
I know Zoom has been a little weird recently with updates and stuff. So
It has been. I've been on a lot of webinars lately, and everyone has been having a really difficult time with it. And struggling with it. So we do apologize for this little interruption, and we should be back up on him in a minute. We'll wait for, see if Omari can pop back on.
And it's strange for me. I've noticed I have another computer, like a Dell computer, and when I share my whole screen or share twice, it gives me an issue, but it doesn't happen for everyone. So hopefully it's a glitch that I feel like it's a Zoom glitch that there hopefully we'll have a patch for soon or something.
I think so, because it's across the board. It really is.
Yeah.
I've noticed it quite a bit as well. Yeah. So let's see. It looks like he is off right now. So we'll just wait just a moment and see if he can get back in. I'm going to just maybe message him, or maybe he's messaged me. No, not yet. He's probably frantically trying to get on. No. It's so stressful when this happens.
Oh, there we go. 1 second.
Okay. You want to mute yourself, Taylor? So again, thank you for your patience, everyone. We should be starting in just a moment. It looks like Omari had a problem with his internet connection or something going on with Zoom. And for those of you that use Zoom often, you probably understand
Okay, so he is going to restart. It's going to take him a few minutes. So I will go ahead
Okay,
and get
great.
started. So let me get my slideshow up.
And I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, Taylor.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Carol, for that lovely introduction. Really appreciate being here with you all today. Thank you all for joining, everyone who's here. Hope you're having a lovely Sunday or whatever day it is if you're watching this after the fact. So today I am here to talk about Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated through the lens of astrology. My name is Taylor Schuler, and I am a professional astrologer. Hopefully, not technically by the end of the day, but maybe perhaps technically by the end of the day, I will, fingers crossed, and prayer said, be a professional certified astrologer through OPA, because today is my last day of my last peer group, and it's the last thing that I need to do to get my certification. So it doesn't say I'm a certified professional astrologer because it's not official yet, but we're almost there. I do consultations, and as Carol said, I also have a YouTube channel and a podcast as well. So that is a little bit about me. So we'll just dive right into the sorority history. So Alpha Kappa Alpha is the first historically black sorority in the United States, and as far as I'm aware, in the world. It was founded on January 15th, 1908, by the 9 founders that we see here. So we have Anna Easter Brown, and we got their birth dates and death dates and locations whenever possible. This was actually quite difficult. There's a lot of digging that needs to be done because, as you can see, they were all born in the 1800s. And to be a Black woman in the 1800s in the United States, having any information about the birth was very, very rare. And then to even be able to get those records today. So a lot of this came from many people digging on ancestry.com and posting it. But even the sororities main website doesn't have their exact dates and locations listed. It only has years and only for some of them. So some of this information is, it's not perfect, certainly, but it's excellent that we have any at all. So for a little context, at the time that Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated were founded, only 1 in 300 African Americans and only 5% of whites who were of eligible age went to any college at all. So, I have chills just saying that. So these women and the men that Omari will talk to you about were extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary, that they were able to attend a college, get into a college, receive scholarships. They were the leaders. They were, perhaps you could say, even of an elite class, 1 in 300 people, right? So extremely rare, extremely intelligent, driven. You just have to imagine being born in the late 1800s, just after the Civil War, what kind of fortitude and spirit and character all of these individuals had to have to do what they did. And as you can see here, almost all of them were educators. One became the dean of women, and another became the first African-American social worker, as far as we can tell, or at least the first female African-American social worker in the United States. So I'll tell you a little bit about them. So Lucy Diggs Slowe, who became the Dean of Women at Howard University, she actually was partners with, I'm so sorry, I forget her first name, but Burrill was her partner's last name. So she lived with a woman for 25 years. And actually their house is called the Slowe Burrill House. And it is on the National Register of Historical Places in Washington, D.C. So they were the first in more than one way. Her and her partner, today we would probably call them wives, they were treated as a couple too. And that was just the way that it was. And so this fact was something that I actually didn't know and found during my research, and I found it really interesting. Now, Ethel Hedgeman Lyle is the founder here, who is credited as the guiding light of the sorority and the organization, because by all accounts, it was her idea, and one of her advisors at Howard University who encouraged her to begin the sorority. And so Ethel was a junior when the sorority was founded. And so she couldn't be president of the organization as a junior, but later on, she is really known as, all of the founders are known as the mothers, the founders of the organization, but Ethel certainly stands out among the founders. So just back to Lucy Diggs Slow for a moment. She was appointed in 1922 as Dean of Women at Howard University, which, as we know, is a historically Black college. She was the first Black Dean of Women there or at any American university. And she bought the house with her partner Beryl in the neighborhood of Brookland, which was a predominantly white middle-class neighborhood in Northeast Washington. They lived there together for 15 years until Slow died in 1937 of kidney disease. And like I said, that house is listed on the National Register of Historical Places. That happened in 2020. Ethel Hedgeman Lyle is actually she was the friend to and later wife to George Lyle, who was in Phi Alpha Beta chapter. He was a founder of that chapter. Beta chapter was founded at Howard University, and as we'll hear later from Omari, Alpha chapter was founded at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. So that's another connection that Ethel Hedgeman Lyle has to the organization and being the first. So having a friend, a lover, a partner who eventually became her husband after AKA was founded, who was in Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, is a major connection. So it's also often referred to as Lyle love between the two organizations, because two prominent founders were married. So Ethel Hedgeman Lyle also was known as the Supreme Tamiochus. So she held the position of treasurer. That's what the Tamiochus position is. She was also honorary basilisk for life. And she was, that's a position, a basilisk is akin to a president of the organization. And that is a title that no one held for their entire life, only Ethel Hedgeman Lyle. Lyle also created social capital and demonstrated in her committed life how African-American sororities supported women to create spheres of influence, authority, and power within institutions that traditionally have allowed African-Americans and women little formal authority and real power. After graduating from Howard, Marie Woolfolk Taylor, another founder, enrolled at Cleveland, Ohio's Schuler Training School for Social Service, where she majored in religion. And at that school, she was the only African-American student, and social work at the time was a new field for the entire nation. After she graduated, she moved back to Atlanta, gained position as a community assistant at a church, which was the second oldest Black congregational church in the nation. And for several years, she served in that position. She also acted as a probation officer, working with delinquent girls for the city of Atlanta. She taught adult classes at night. And for 4 years, she was the head of inspection for the African-American legal company, Standard Life Insurance Company, which grew to be a major business in Atlanta. And so Woolfolk was the first in her generation to be a social worker, as the new field was called at the time. And at that time, it developed as a progressive movement to help with massive social changes resulting from increased migration to cities from the South to the North, as well as increased immigration from Europe. And during the Great Atlanta Fire on May 21st, 1917, Woolfolk was one of 2 African Americans who assisted the Red Cross. Taylor was also involved in leading a range of civic-related activities in Atlanta. And she, like many of the founders, were chartering members or chartering presidents of a number of alumni chapters. So these organizations are primarily undergraduate, as we know Greek organizations to be, but something that I find to be somewhat unique of the Divine Nine, the National Panhellenic Council, or the Black Greek letter organizations, is that graduate life, so postgraduate, post undergraduate, is very important. And so graduate chapters are formed, and that's really where so much of the life happens. We think often that Greek letter organizations are just like frat parties and things like that. That's absolutely not what historically Black sororities and fraternities are about. It's really about service. And you can see from the character of these people, from the fact that they dedicated their lives to education and to social work, and some of the things that we'll see as I continue the talk, some of the things that they did, the impact that they were really trying to make on the world. The reason that all of these women became educators is because at the time there was a crisis in having credentialed or sort of not even certified or credentialed, but just qualified teachers to teach the next generation of students. And so they all went to school so that they could go back to their communities and give back and educate the next generation. So as I was saying, it was founded on January 15th, 1908 at Howard University in Washington, D.C. We're going to look at some key events. I have a bigger timeline, but some of the events that we used to rectify the chart were the first Ivy Beyond the Wall. So an Ivy Beyond the Wall is AKA's way of saying a sorority member or a soror who has passed on. And so the first member who passed on, we'll look at that as an event. And the first boule, when the first graduate chapter was founded, as well as when the first Ivy Leaf, which is the official publication of the sorority, was published. So some more about the sorority. We know astrology is a lot about archetypes. And so we have here on the left a badge, which is a green enameled ivy leaf embellished with a rim of pearls. And we see the rulership of pearls is the moon and Venus. The motto is by culture and by merit. And we see that Venus and Taurus, Taurus and the bull, that is related to culture. The symbol is the ivy leaf. The flower is the pink tea rose. And we see the pink rose as being related to Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. Jupiter's rulership is red roses. The moon and Venus are white roses. The colors are salmon pink and apple green. And I mentioned before, the official publication is the Ivy Leaf. And the ivy is ruled by the sun, moon, Jupiter, and Saturn, depending on which text you go back to. Today, there are 114,000 active members worldwide, 355,000 members initiated worldwide, 1,061 chapters across 50 states or territories, 11 countries. There are 9 national regions, which you can see color-coded here, and 1 international region. So we started out with a noon chart for January 15th, 1908. And in beginning our research and having conversations and looking at the archetypes and seeing how does this play out, this chart already felt really good. You can see, I mentioned Venus and Taurus as ruling pearls, for example. We know that they were affiliated with universities, so a 9th house emphasis would be expected, or perhaps Gemini and Sagittarius placements for that. And so what we ended up seeing, and the name too, right? Alpha. Alpha is the first. So you would expect to see some Aries or prominent Mars. And what do we see? We do see Mars in Aries. And here we even have a sun moon midpoint in Aries as well, even though this is a noon chart. But the sorority was founded on a mission of 5 basic tenets that have remained unchanged since the sorority's inception. And so I want to go through those and show you how we can see that in this chart. And before I do that, I just want to Yeah. So what we're looking for here are the first tenet of the mission is to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards. So we'd expect to see some Capricorn or ninth house with that, because Capricorn is about mastery. The second tenet is to promote unity. And I think we can see that with the Saturn and Pisces, right? So Pisces all about like the collective and coming to sort of like the omega after the alpha, right? Like the collective unconscious there. So, but also friendship amongst college women. And so we see Venus in Aquarius as being very forward thinking, futuristic women, a group of, women thinking about the future. The third is to study and help alleviate problems concerning girls and women in order to improve their social stature. So again, a Venusian influence, which we see with the Taurus rising and Venus at the top of the chart, and a number of Capricorn placements that suggest mastery. The fourth tenet is to maintain a progressive interest in college life. And so I think that progressive interest is about those Capricorn and Aquarius placements. College life, again, a ninth house or Sagittarian influence. And just that life aspect is to see some fire in the chart, perhaps. And then the fifth tenet is to be of service to all mankind, which again, I think that the Chiron and Venus in Aquarius and Saturn in Pisces all suggest service to all mankind. I also just want to point out that the sun here at 24 degrees of Capricorn is the same degree that Martin Luther King Jr. has. And we will see a connection there a little bit later, but just to give you a sense of the energy behind this chart. So after some of the events that we looked at, here are some of the timeline and events that we looked at. So the first Ivy Beyond the Wall, there was a political action conference. The sorority was incorporated so that it would be in existence in perpetuity. We also looked at that first Ivy League, and a telegram was sent to the president. There was an Ethel Hedgeman Lyle Fund established. The Mississippi Health Project was a huge initiative that focused on health. The Special Marks Incorporated investment. This was a Wall Street investment for a Black Wall Street firm, which was unheard of at the time. There was a national convention held in Philadelphia with Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, who were in attendance. The sorority won a $4 million contract from the Office of Economic Opportunity in order to create jobs. In 1965. In 1978, it became a lifelong member of the United Negro College Fund. Also, the NAACP windows were installed in Rankin Chapel at Howard University in honor of the sorority, and it was the 70th anniversary. The Educational Advancement Foundation was created to support the education of girls and women. And a corporate office began to be built in Chicago, Illinois in the 80s. And also an African village development program began in the 80s that later won awards and achievements that were recognized based on the work that was done in Africa. That corporate office, I think I put that twice by accident, my apologies. And then a new headquarters was begun in 2017. And the sorority has a number of cultural things that we do. So we have a sound, which I won't make because it's very high pitched. And I don't think it will translate well through the Zoom here, but it's a ski-wee is the name of the sound. And there was a sound mark, actually sort of like a trademark registered with the US government in 2018. And then finally in 2021, one of our own sisters, Soror Kamala Harris, who you may be familiar with, was inaugurated as Vice President of the United States of America. And when she was inaugurated, Vogue magazine put out a cover of her where she had on pink and green as an homage to her organization. So this is the chart that we came up with thanks to Carol Tebbs. Thank you very much to Carol for her assistance in helping us to rectify the chart. And when Carol came back with this, I was so pleased to see it, because I was speaking with Omari and I said, Omari, I really think we've got something here at the anaretic degrees of Taurus going on, because that noon chart seemed to fit so well. But then when we started progressing the chart forward and we saw like that first ivy beyond the wall, especially what was going on at that time in the chart, we could really see how this chart worked out. So we've got Sun and Mercury in the 9th house, honoring the collegial nature of the organization. Venus, women, Chiron, taking our own wounds, our own pain, becoming teachers, becoming healers, being of service to all mankind in Aquarius. Also Saturn and Pisces, very prominent at the top of the chart, being a strong, structured organization who's very caring and compassionate for all people. And the strong Mars and Aries, able to take action and make an impact on the world and be the first. Also, very powerful Moon Pluto conjunction in Gemini, again, speaks to the educational nature of powerful women in this organization, right there in the 1st house, but applying to the 2nd house cusp, at least with the Regiomontanus house system that we see there. And so this is the chart for, we've got the transits here on the outer ring and the inner ring for the first ivy beyond the wall. So I'm just curious, anyone in the chat, if you want to say, if you see anything in this chart.
Don't be shy.
And I actually think it would have been better. I meant to put in the transits on the outside, but oh no, it is transits. I'm sorry, I meant to put the progressions. But any thoughts anyone has about the ivy beyond the wall? So what we see essentially, it's just 1 year later, and so we see the Moon Pluto activation happening at that time. Excuse me. And so, and also Chiron coming to Venus as well. And so there's a core wounding there that's happening as well. Any other thoughts from folks out there? We see this moon in Scorpio on the descendant. And also we see that Neptune getting closer to Black Moon Lilith. So those are just a couple thoughts there on the first ivy beyond the wall. And then the first ivy leaf published we had in, I did the solar return here. So we have January 14th of 1921, because that is the year that that is the year that the Ivy Leaf was published. And so looking at the solar return, which is, I actually put on the inner wheel just so that we could see what was rising there. So we have a Cancer rising chart that year, which means the moon's ruling the chart. And where do we find the moon? We find it in the 9th house of publication. And it's also there on that natal Saturn in Pisces. So making something about publishing come to tangible reality, and also the Piscean nature of being dispersed on a very large, wide level. So those are some thoughts about the first Ivy Leaf being published. Here we have the incorporation chart. So for the sorority was founded on January 15th, but it was not incorporated until 5 years and 2 weeks later. And part of this story here about the incorporation is that there were a number of members who realized there were things that they wanted to do in the organization that they were not able to do because the organization was not a legal entity at that time. And they also had some other ideas. They said, why don't we change the colors? And why don't we change the song? And why don't we change the flower? And why don't we change the name so that it sounds more Greek? And if you are in the audience and you are you're aware of the history, you probably know what I'm talking about. And I see there's something in Q&A. Sean, I'll take I'll take that question in just a second.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. So if you're not familiar with the story, what happened is that several members left the sorority of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and they began their own sorority called Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And their colors are red and white. They also were founded at Howard University, obviously, because these were Alpha chapter sorors or members at the time. And so 2 weeks after Delta Sigma Theta sorority was founded and incorporated, Alpha Kappa Alpha was incorporated. And you can note that this is only 2 weeks after the what we call an accaversary or the anniversary of founding day on January 29th of 1913. Again, we did go with the noon chart. You may recognize this late degree of Taurus rising. Whoops. And what do we see there? We see Saturn coming to make something solid, durable, lasting in perpetuity in Taurus. So they were a little bit slow there. So yes, exactly. Saturn is at the rectified ascendant for AKA. So it was pretty incredible. Samuel, thank you for saying that. It was pretty incredible to see that. It was, I mean, I was very happy when I saw that. So here's just another look at that. So to see the rectified Founders Day chart, we've got that ascendant right there at 27. And then at the incorporation, we see 27 degrees. Oh, Soror Cassie, it's so good to see you. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I also think it's very beautiful in this incorporation. We've got Venus there at 25 degrees of Pisces, very close to the Saturn at 22 degrees of Pisces in the Founders Day. So the women coming together, again, to say, we're making this solid. We're coming together, we're unifying. We also see the North Node at 4 degrees of Aries coming to that natal Mars at 3 degrees. It's applying to that 3 degrees of Aries. So we're taking action now. We're ready to take action. And let me just see if the next slide, I think I put them together so we can see it a little easier. So on the inner ring, we have the Founders Day, and on the outer ring, we have the incorporation date. So we see a number of these Mars activations. So we see the transiting Saturn to the natal ascendant, also transiting Venus to the natal Saturn, which I mentioned. That triggers the natal excitation, is one way we could say it, of the Saturn square Pluto moon. So Pluto is about powerful transformations. The moon can be emotions. It's the literal body. It's the collective. And so Saturn, Pluto, moon together, a change in the structure, a very deep power struggle as well that was going on at the time. We also see transiting Mars opposite the natal Neptune. So there was a feeling of discouragement, weakness, feelings of inadequacy, perhaps coming up against very strong opposition and changes of success, or chances of success maybe not being great. So the chances of success of these two people coming together and saying, or two, different ideas, factions within the organization coming together, the success of them staying together and cohesive, chances of success of that not being so great. Then we also see transiting Mars, the natal South Node, and Uranus as well, which speaks of power, passion, anger, frustration for desire to change, really working overtime to have some sort of healthy closure. And then also transiting North Node conjunct that natal Mars, which I love. Nadia Shah says that this is about the serenity prayer. It's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then finally, we have the sun in the incorporation chart applying to the natal Chiron, which is all about the wound. So the sun here is illuminating. It's bringing awareness to a very deep wound. And to this day, this story is a very wounding story. And the fact that I'm even talking about this, if you're a member of one of these organizations, may make you uncomfortable, or it's sort of like, we don't say it, but it's true. But also that Chiron being important to all of the organizations of the Divine Nine, because we are here to be of service, and to make the world a better place, and to teach and to heal future generations. So I thought that was really interesting. Here we have the, and I see Omari's back, so I'll try to speed it up and wrap it up just for time's sake, because I know we can't go through everything. But yep, there we've just got that. I think I just want to mention there was a progressed moon opposite Venus, which just spoke to having some different needs, wanting a new aesthetic, and also just this need for love and affection as well, with the incorporation happening at the same time as the split from Delta. Here, this is the progressed centennial chart. So from 2008, when the international president said, the next thing we need to do is see the organization as a maverick blazing a trail. We won't just be of service, we will have a seat at the table. And I see that as the progressed moon to Chiron. Also the natal Saturn to the progressed sun moon midpoint, and progressed Saturn to the natal Mars as well. So concretely taking action for the future. And then also the progressed Chiron, this wounded healer and teacher, to the progressed descendant and natal Venus. And then we also see the progressed Venus to the Pluto moon. And what all of this says, I know I'm talking very quickly and using a lot of astrology jargon, but I'm trying to wrap it up for you, Omari, is it's just that Soror Kamala Harris became president of the United States as well. So having a seat at that table. And finally, in this chart, we see that we're soaring to greater heights of sisterhood and service. This is the chart of the start of this talk today, where we can see Virgo rising, a moon in Virgo, and a moon at the top of, Mars at the top of the chart, really taking charge with Pluto to soar to greater heights and be serious about that. And I just wanted to mention the other organizations, and you can see the years that they were founded. And I'll just flash up some famous members for you. You may recognize some of these names. And just a thank you from me to all of these folks. So thank you very much. And you can use that QR code to find me. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
I'll
Omari,
pass it to
nice to
you.
have you back.
Omari, yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. Technology, that's all I can say. But really what it was, everyone, the universe wanted the lady to go first.
There
and the
you
universe
go.
will have its way.
That's funny. I think so.
Well, we're happy to
Okay.
have you back, Omari. Thank you.
Thank
Anytime
you,
you're ready,
thank you.
we're ready for you.
Okay, give me a quick second. Just those technology issues. So thank you everyone for your patience. Let me, there it is. Okay, great. Let me share my screen with you once again. There we have that. Let me go to slideshow. Okay, there we are. Okay, great. So good to be back. So thank you, Soror Taylor. And so I will present Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated through the lens of astrology. So I'll start with some fraternity history. Alpha Phi Alpha is the first intercollegiate Greek letter fraternity established for African-American men. It was founded on December 4th, 1906, and at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, by 7 college men who recognized the need for a strong bond of brotherhood among African descendants in this country. And I do want to add that the founding of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated was in direct response to the racism that they experienced at Cornell University. At Cornell University, they were able to observe their white male counterparts engaged in the bonds of brotherly love and fraternal spirit in fraternal organizations such as Sigma Alpha Epsilon. And they wanted that experience for themselves, and of course would not be allowed an opportunity to become a member because of the color of their skin. And so the fraternity initially served as a study and support group for minority students who faced racial prejudice, both educationally and socially at Cornell. And the Jewel founders and early leaders of the fraternity succeeded in laying a firm foundation for Alpha Phi Alpha's principles of scholarship, fellowship, good character, and the uplifting of humanity. Here are some drawings or depictions of our Jewel brothers, the founders. We affectionately refer to them as Jewel brothers. And here, if you can see my cursor, we have Henry Arthur Callis, followed by Charles Henry Chapman, Eugene Kinkle Jones, George Biddle Kelly, Nathaniel Allison Murray, and here, Robert Harold Ogle and Bertna Woodson Tandy. Each of these African-American men accomplished something significant in their respective professions. And in most cases, the gentleman was the first African-American to accomplish some goal or receive an award in his respective professional area. So the motto of the fraternity is, first of all, servants of all, we shall transcend all. This is the fraternity crest and the flower. The flower for the fraternity is the yellow rose. And this is the symbol of the fraternity, the Great Sphinx at Giza. And this symbol was intentionally chosen in an effort to make the connection with our African ancestry. And of course, I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with the Great Sphinx at Giza in some shape, form, or fashion. The colors of the fraternity are old gold and black. Well, old gold, the sun is associated with that color. The sun represents men in general, leadership, strength, authority, honor, determination, and loyalty. And black, Pluto, self-empowerment, transcendence, group activity, and universal welfare. We have 4 national programs. Brothers Keeper. This is a national program where we make it a point not to forget about our senior brothers, their spouses, and their widows, making sure we do what we can to attend to their needs after their years of service and membership in the fraternity. We also have a voteless people is a hopeless people. Yes, everything about voter registration and voter education. Many local chapters around elections, especially presidential elections, will certainly make it a point to have voter registration drives in their respective communities. Go to high school, go to college. This is a program where, yes, we encourage young Black men, go to high school, graduate, go to college, graduate. The fraternity emphasizes the significance of education and scholarship. And then we have Project Alpha. This is a program for young males ages 12 to 15, and where we focus on education, motivation, and skill building in the areas of responsibility, relationships, teen pregnancy, as well as sexually transmitted infections. So I want to take a look at the founding chart, and it's most appropriate for me to recognize one of our esteemed colleagues in the astrology community, Carol Tabbs, who's a certified member with the International Society of Astrological Research. I do want to add, Carol and I serve on the board of Kepler College, and she's written a book about rectification, and I reached out to her for her assistance, and she rectified the founding chart of both Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, and we thank her for that. So this is the chart for the fraternity. Now, in the interest of time, everyone, I'm just going to do highlights based on what I see in the moment. So it will not be an exhaustive delineation and synthesis of the founding chart, as well as the other charts that we will look at today. So certainly want to give attention to the sun at 11 degrees of Sagittarius. Let me put my cursor down here so people can see it. And so here, again, the sun represents men in general, and then Sagittarius in the third house. The third house is the house of community. Normally we associate this house with neighbors, and where are we near our neighbors in our communities where we live. This organization, Alpha Phi Alpha, is very much about community service. The founders thought big in terms of the possibility for a fraternity of African-American men. And it also speaks to their courage, because they were the first to establish a fraternity for African-American men at a predominantly white institution or any university. And the sun is the ruler of the 11th house of organizations, namely fraternities. I also want to give attention to the moon. The moon is the ruler of the 10th house, career, public standing, and achievements. I'll apply that even though it's an organization and not a human being. But I really want to highlight that the sun is dignified at, excuse me, not the sun, the moon is dignified at 17 degrees of Cancer. And the founders intended to represent themselves to, groups of people, the masses of the people, and especially those on the campus of Cornell University, and as history will have it, subsequently other campuses, college campuses across the country. They also wanted to present themselves as men of honor and good repute. And with the moon at 17 Cancer in a separating conjunction to Neptune, they held this as an ideal way to present themselves to the public. And this would also that it would inspire one another to be that way. And this was coupled with the benevolence and charity, considering that Jupiter is within 1 degree and 30 minutes of arc of the 10th house cusp, which is right here. And brothers are proud of the reputation of the fraternity. I do want to give attention to Mars. Mars, we are certainly talking about taking action, fighting, perhaps protesting, and it's in Libra. So all of that is done with the intention to bring justice, fairness, equity, balance, and peace. And this Mars forms a trine to Pluto in the 9th house. And really, just from the founding of the fraternity, the power base, if you will, was found at institutions of higher learning, the universities and the colleges. And then we have this Pluto in Gemini. Gemini is also associated with the twins, identical twins, Pollux and Castor. And what was this about? This was about brotherhood. And so on college campuses and having the power of being self-empowered to come together as such. For those fraternity brothers who are in the space, again, this founding chart was rectified independently of a member of the frat. And I was surprised to see 6 degrees on the ascendant, Libra, and 46 minutes of arc. And I also want to highlight that 7 degrees is on the midheaven. Again, this is through an independent rectification. And for those who are not familiar with rectification, rectification is a process by which, if the astrologer does not have the birth time or starting time, the professional astrologer will identify 7 to maybe 12 significant events existence of an organization or life of a human being. And based on when those events actually occurred, the professional astrologer will reverse engineer that chart back to time zero, wherein time zero is equal to the starting time or the birth time. And Venus, the ruler of the chart, is also found in the third house of community. So while we have a group of Black men in the communities doing community service, they do so out of love and to bring that peace, justice, and equity to their communities. Okay, so I want to take a look at some progress charts. And quickly, I'll take a look at Beta Chapter. So Beta Chapter is the second chapter of the fraternity, founded at Howard University on December 20th, 1907. And we'll take a look at the first founder to transition, Jewel brother Charles Henry Chapman in 1934. That's November 1934. We'll take a look at the first incorporation chart, January 29th, 1908 in New York, and the second incorporation chart on April 13th, 1914 in Washington, D.C. So I want to expand this. And again, everyone, I just want to focus on some quick highlights in the interest of time. And so here we have the founding of Beta Chapter. So what I did, I have progressed the founding chart of the fraternity to the date that Beta Chapter was founded. And I'm using the Bija method of secondary progression. And I want to give credit to Dr. Ron Tigo, an African-American astrologer who introduced this to me and made the case. So let's see. So I want to just give attention to the progressed Jupiter. And we see the progressed Jupiter, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. It's at 8 Cancer, and it forms a conjunction to the progressed midheaven at 8 degrees of Cancer. And it also has moved closer to the natal midheaven at 7 Cancer. And it also makes that opposition to the 4th house cusp, or the IC, at 7 Capricorn, and to Uranus at 7 degrees of Capricorn. So we do know that Jupiter represents expansion and growth. And the founding of Beta Chapter certainly represented the founding and the growth of the fraternity, and then the opposition to the 4th house cusp. Well, also what began to happen is that some of the organizational activities kind of made their way from Alpha Chapter at Cornell University to Beta Chapter at Howard University. Howard University is the premier HBCU. Hello to any Bisons in the house if you're here. And that is also the university where other organizations of the Divine Nine were founded. Just in case Soror Taylor shared with you those other organizations. So we have, of course, her sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, was founded at Howard. Delta Sigma Theta sorority was founded at Howard. Zeta Phi Beta was founded at Howard. Phi Beta Sigma fraternity was founded at Howard, and Omega Psi Phi fraternity was also founded at Howard University. And so with the other organizations, which would in the future be founded at Howard, this growth is significant. I will also add that I want to highlight that while this founding for Beta Chapter took place in December of 1907, and we know that Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority was founded on January 15th, 1908, I really speculate that the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha and the women who would become founding members of Alpha Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, yes, they knew one another and socialized with one another. And I would be willing to say that they probably wanted to start Beta Chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha and Alpha Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha at the same time, but maybe due to some paperwork or some other unforeseen circumstances, that just did not happen. But I really speculate that that may have been the intention. So here is the headstone of jewel brother Charles Henry Chapman, June 20th, 1870, November 17th, 1934, of course, founder of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He was a professor of agriculture at Florida A&M College, now university. Says he was an outstanding educator and great humanitarian, inspired the establishment of Beta Nu chapter, of course, founded at Florida A&M. And so this is the founding chart of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. And I have progressed it to the month, day, and year of Jewel Brother Chapman's transition or entrance into what we call Omega chapter. And we see here that the progressed ascendant of the fraternity is at the ingress point of Scorpio, representing a transformation, if you will, of the organization in terms of how it presents itself to the world, or perhaps in terms of how it sees itself. And so literally from that point forward, you know, the seven Jewel brothers would no longer meet at any of the conventions or any of the other events that would take place. We also see that Neptune at 11 Cancer is forming a quincunx to the natal sun of the fraternity. And the sun is the ruler of the 11th house and the house that rules, I'll say, fraternal organizations. So this also, I want to say, represented, I'll go so far as to say a spiritual moment for the organization, because I also want to add that Jewel Brother Chapman was 17 years older than the youngest Jewel brother. So when they all met, clearly he was older. He was the mature adult, if you will. Let's see. And so there's so much more that I could share and say, but I would like to move forward. So here we have the first incorporation chart of the fraternity. And again, this is the founding chart of the fraternity, progressed to the date of the first incorporation, which was January 29th, 1908. Now, interestingly, the brothers made the choice to incorporate the fraternity 14 days after Alpha chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority was founded. Now, this incorporation took place in New York, and I will add that Alpha Kappa Alpha did their incorporation on January 29th, the same month and day, but their first incorporation took place in the year 1913, 14 days after at what we refer to their Founders Day. But to continue, so with this incorporation, we see that the secondary progressed moon is still in the 10th house, but it's at 0 degrees of Leo. So this represents, you know, Leo is a fixed sign. So this represents like establishment of the fraternity as a legal entity. So now that the fraternity is incorporated as a fictitious person, according to the letter of the law, it can own property. It can, you know, now have a bank account, borrow money, so forth and so on. I also wanted to pinpoint or highlight that this secondary progressed moon does form a trine to the natal Mercury at 2 Sagittarius and the secondary progressed Mercury at 1 Sagittarius. And Mercury is the ruler of the 9th house, and the 9th house would rule legal affairs and legal matters. And the incorporation of any organization is, in fact, a legal matter. And once again, there are just more things that I'd love to highlight, but in the interest of time, I want to move forward. And we'll also take a look at the second incorporation chart. And with the second incorporation chart, it was incorporated in Washington, D.C. And so here we find that the ruler of the midheaven, the moon, by secondary progression, has made its way to Mars within a 1-degree orb of Mars. And we also continue to see that secondary progressed Neptune forming that quincunx to the natal sun of the fraternity. And again, the legal matters are highlighted, but also this represented, I want to say, a transfer of some of the power and influence from Alpha chapter, which was at Cornell University, a predominantly white institution, to Beta chapter at Howard University, a historical Black college university. And so this second incorporation chart, I think also, it's in Libra. So now the moon is in Libra. And by this time, 1914, the other members, well, the other organizations, fraternal and sorority organizations founded at Howard, now were all in existence. And obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, I speculate again that because the brothers were able to observe the other fraternities and sororities being established at Howard University, that may have been a part of the decision to reincorporate in Washington, D.C. So I want to just speak to Alpha Phi Alpha 2 to 3 years ahead. So I'm just looking at the outer planets. And so based on the rectified founding chart of the fraternity, the next 2 to 3 years, Pluto will move from 28 Capricorn to 3 Aquarius. I would say there may be a transformation of Alpha in terms of some of the traditions, wherein some traditions outlive their usefulness. And as human beings, what do? We just make new ones and put them in place. I also will say the fraternity will do more to leverage the technology that's available. And this isn't exclusive to Alpha Phi Alpha or any of the Divine Nine organizations. This is applied to astrology organizations as well as churches, wherein we're on the cusp of a generational handover or transfer of power from the generation referred to as the baby boomers to the generation referred to as Generation X and also potentially Generation Y. Neptune moves from 23 Pisces to 2 Aries in the next 2 to 3 years. I would say the fraternity will continue to develop programs, but now with a focus on men's health, where African-American men take better care of themselves with doing things that are preventive and also making it a point to optimize your health and sustain your current level of health and improve it if possible. Then Uranus moves from 14 Taurus to 1 Gemini. That takes place in the 8th house. The transiting Neptune takes place in house number 6, and transiting Pluto, that takes place in house number 4. So with Uranus, transiting Uranus in Taurus, moving through the 8th house, I'm gonna just put it out there. It's possible. So the 2nd house represents the money from the relationship or other people's money. And the fraternity may receive inheritances from members of the fraternity who make their transition. Yes, it could potentially be a couple of $1 million. Who knows? We'll see. And it is also possible that a change in tax laws may impact the financial structure of the fraternity and perhaps in how it reports its income. And this could even be coupled with tax liability implications. Here we have some well-known alpha men. Some of these names you may recognize. Of course, Brother Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, Thurgood Marshall, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, Dick Gregory, David Dinkins, Maynard Jackson, Andrew Young, Barry Jenkins, Dennis Kimbrough, Dr. Cornel West, John H. Johnson, Duke Ellington, Tony Brown, Donny Hathaway, Lionel Richie, Wes Unseld, Jesse Owens, and Robert F. Smith. Each of these alpha men is the first to have accomplished some significant goal in their community or society as a whole. And alpha men today continue to hold the light of alpha high, and in our own ways, we too make it a point to serve as the first. So I believe my fraternity brother, Sam Reynolds, is in the audience. How you doing, Frat? And I do want to just take a liberty to recognize Frat brother Sam Reynolds. As some of you may know, Sam Reynolds is the first president of the International Academy of Astrology. Following in the footsteps of Dr. Ron Tiggle, Sam also served on the board of ESAR, and there are probably other few firsts that my frat brother Sam Reynolds has accomplished, and I don't know of them, but I certainly want to take it a moment to recognize his accomplishments that I know of as a member of the fraternity and in the astrology community. And well, I am Leo rising, so you know I must do this, but it's appropriate for me to acknowledge myself in terms of how I hold the light of Alpha high in terms of taking on leadership opportunities so that I may continue to develop as a human being. So I am the first African-American to serve as the president of the Friends of Astrology Incorporated, founded in 1938. I'm the first being a board member of the American Federation of Astrologers in 1938, the first African-American board member of the Astrology News Service, the first African-American board chair of Kepler College of Astrological Arts and Sciences, and I'm serving in all those leadership roles concurrently. And today, Soror Taylor and I are the first to represent Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority to the astrology community and members of our organizations. And this is history in the making. So I thank OPA. I am a life member of the Organization for Professional Astrology, and I thank OPA and the current president, Kay Taylor, for affording Soror Taylor and I this opportunity. And with that, I say thank you. And for those of you who want to reach out to me, there is my contact information. And Carol, thank you for your patience with me and this technology. And it has been a pleasure.
Omari, thank you. It's always lovely to see you. And this has just been a fantastic presentation. Taylor, thank you so much. And I think, Taylor, you had answered that one question that was in the chat box. Thank you. And I know Sam Reynolds is going to love hearing this presentation because he had to leave a little while back.
Okay.
But he was enjoying it so much. He had an appointment, but he will get the recording and he will listen to all of the wonderful accolades. And I have to tell you both, I'm just so fascinated that the data that you had was just so incredible, because it's my understanding from, the knowledge that I have is that it was so difficult to get birth dates and birth times. And because I understand that back in the day, if you will, they did not keep good records of African-American births. They didn't use correct names. They would just say male or female. Many times they would take the last name of the owner if they were in slavery. And it's my understanding that names were not really put in the books until the late 1800s, early 1900s. Do you know much about that?
So I was able to find a little bit online through my research. There's a number of books. I believe one book is called The Divine Nine. It's a a pretty standard book for folks joining the organizations to get and read. And some of I just went through the notes, the citations at the end, and like ancestry.com is a pretty common source, because people are finding through their Bibles, through the things that they're inheriting, written things.
Yes.
And also going to county clerk's offices. That was another potential place to get information, birth information, death information. The death information is a little bit easier to get because people were aware of their significance. The birth information, obviously, more difficult.
Yes, and death records, I think, were at a later time then too.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. There's a wonderful PBS series that they were doing on the American experience on the Freedom Riders, and they touched a lot about, the college students and the different schools, and it was a series, and it was absolutely fantastic. And people can still go on PBS and look at that series because it's a really amazing, fascinating journey through all of the different colleges and how they went to Atlanta and all the things that they went through to have, what some of the freedoms that are available now that sometimes we don't recognize, and we still have a long way to go.
Yes.
But this was just a blessing. Thank you so much, both of you. And I appreciate the work and the complete research that you did, because really this is historical to have this information compiled like this.
Yes, and thank you, Carol. I agree with you, and just the rectified time for Alpha Phi Alpha and how it fit. And while I had to, move with a little speed through those charts, if you just look at some of the significant things that stand out, when the secondary progressed moon went to 0 Leo with the first incorporation chart, and with the passing of the first jewel brother and the ascendant as 0 degrees Scorpio, the ingress point, like a new beginning of something, for that organization. It really, it stood out. And of course, the secondary progressed moon would get to 0 degrees of Leo, but with it being the ruler of the midheaven, there's the significance right there.
Yes, yes. Well, it was a beautiful presentation, and we appreciate having you both with us, and definitely historical. And I look forward to sharing it with our other members who are unable to attend today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carol. And I just want to say, if there are members out there of other Divine Nine organizations or of these two that we talked about today, we would love to connect with you. We see that this is an area where there is some interest and potential. And so we'd love to maybe talk about this more with folks and have more presentations like this. So please get in touch with us.
Absolutely. Yes, and you both know that we're always open to that. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Carol. Be well, everyone.
Be well, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.